You know that feeling, right? That sinking feeling when you look at the clock and just know you're going to be late.
Oh, yeah. Happens to everyone.
It really does. And then, well, then you have to apologize. Explain. It could be a bit awkward.
It can. And it's interesting how the words we choose, they really matter in that moment, how people see our lateness.
Exactly. We've been looking at this transcript from English Podcast Zone, episode 6. It's aimed at English learners.
Right. And it focuses on vocabulary for being late. It uses this dialogue, a boss, an assistant, and 3 employees who turn up late.
Yeah. And what's great is how much useful stuff you can pull from just that one conversation.
Definitely.
So our mission today really is to dig into those everyday phrases people use when they're late. Understand the nuances.
And maybe help everyone sound a bit more natural, or at least understand common excuses better.
Think of it as like a shortcut to decoding the language of being late.
Okay, so the setup and the source was this boss getting pretty annoyed.
Understandably.
Yeah, 10 a.m. meeting, it hasn't started. Only the assistant is there. 3 people missing.
Right. And the excuses start coming in. Yeah. The first one, it was from Joe, but relayed by the assistant.
Yeah, the assistant says Joe will be here in a sec because she got tied up with a client.
Got tied up. That is such a common one.
It really is.
And the image it creates, it's not just busy. It's like you're actually restrained, like tied with a rope or something.
Exactly. It suggests you couldn't get away, something unavoidable was holding you. It kind of implies it wasn't your fault.
Mm-hmm. Takes the personal responsibility down a notch.
Right. It shifts focus. The original podcast gave some good examples like, sorry I'm late, honey, I got tied up at the office.
Okay.
Or I was tied up on the phone all afternoon.
Right. Couldn't do anything else.
And didn't get any work done. Even I got tied up in traffic. It's quite versatile.
It really is. Much better than just saying, I was doing something else, isn't it?
Definitely sounds more legitimate, maybe? Like you were stuck on something important.
Okay, so next up was Jess. She actually arrives and apologizes in person.
Yeah, she says, sorry I'm late, everyone. Oh, there was a huge traffic jam on the highway this morning.
And then she adds more detail.
Right, she says, there was a huge pileup on the highway and traffic was backed up for miles.
Wow. Okay, let's break that down. Traffic jam, we all know that one. Lots of stopped cars.
Pretty standard, yeah. But pile up, that sounds much worse.
It does. It suggests a big accident, multiple cars involved, maybe even literally piled up.
Yeah, it implies a major incident, something serious that would definitely cause a big delay, not just slow traffic.
And then backed up for miles. That paints a picture, doesn't it?
It really does. You just imagine this huge, long line of cars stretching way, way back from the accident scene.
It adds a lot of weight to her excuse. Makes it sound completely unavoidable.
Exactly. Then there was Scott. He called in.
Yeah, he called to say he's running late.
Ah, another classic.
And his reason was that his last meeting ran over.
Okay, running late. That feels super common, very native sounding.
It is. It's just a straightforward way to say, I know I'm not going to be on time.
But it's quite general, isn't it? Like, it doesn't always say why.
That's true. The source mentioned that too. Sometimes just saying I'm running late without a reason might seem a bit less considerate.
Yeah, it lacks the detail of the others, though the examples they gave show it's flexible. Like, Jane is running late, she'll be here in 10 minutes. That's helpful.
Or traffic is really bad, so I'm running late. There's a reason there.
And I'm running a bit late, so please start without me. That's practical.
Okay, and the reason Scott gave was his meeting ran over.
Right. Now, that's specific to scheduled things, like meetings, appointments.
It means it went longer than scheduled, right?
Exactly. If it was supposed to end at 2.0, but went to 2.15, it ran over by 15 minutes.
It's neat. Concise.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, now the fourth person, the excuse was, about coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like, the line was way, way too long at Starbucks, waiting for 20 minutes.
And the original hosts weren't too impressed with that one.
No, and you can see why. It's an explanation, sure, but it doesn't feel like a good reason, does it? Not like being tied up with a client or stuck in a pileup.
Exactly. Getting coffee feels like a choice, a personal errand, not some external force holding you up.
It sort of suggests your priorities might be a bit off if you're holding up a meeting for a latte.
Right. It highlights that unspoken agreement about what counts as a valid excuse. Personal convenience usually doesn't cut it.
Okay, so moving on. The source had this fluency builder section. More useful bits. Joe's first message, remember. She'd be here in a sec.
Ah, yes, in a sec. Sounds so fast, doesn't it?
Like 1 second. But It's usually not just 1 second, is it?
No, not literally. The podcast pointed out it means very soon, but probably, more like a minute. Maybe even a bit longer than a minute sometimes.
There's a bit of an exaggeration, but everyone understands it means imminently.
Pretty much. They compared it to in a minute, which might actually mean a bit longer, maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Interesting. Little words. Big difference in expectation.
It's all nuance. Then back to Jess and her traffic problems. She asked someone, were you stuck in traffic as well?
Right. Stuck in traffic. Another key phrase.
Yeah, it really conveys that feeling of being completely stopped, unable to move, trapped, basically.
Helpless in the gridlock.
Exactly. And she repeated that the traffic was backed up for miles.
We touched on that, but yeah, it just emphasizes the scale. A long, unmoving queue of cars.
Paints a very clear, frustrating picture.
Definitely. All this talk about excuses and delays naturally brings up culture, doesn't it?
It really does. The Source podcast touched on that too, how views on time and lateness aren't the same everywhere.
Yeah, that's where it gets super interesting. What counts as on time can be so different.
Totally. The host mentioned North America, Canada, the U.S., where for meetings, punctuality is generally expected, like 10 a.m. means 10 a.m. or very close to it.
Right, you show up then.
But then they contrasted it with concepts like Latino time or Hispanic time.
Where it's often more relaxed.
Yeah, arriving a bit later for a meeting might be perfectly normal. And for social things, like dinner.
Oh yeah, definitely later. An 8 p.m. invite might mean people show up at 8:30, 9.000 even.
And it's not considered rude in that context, it's just the flow. They also mentioned the workday start.
How so?
Well, in some places, arriving at 9 a.m. might mean you then get coffee, settle in, chat a bit, and start working closer to, say, 9.15 or 9.3.
Whereas in North America, the expectation is often, be at your desk ready to go at 9 a.m.
Precisely. And you can see how easily misunderstandings could happen across cultures.
Oh, absolutely. What's normal for one person is unprofessional to another.
It really makes you realize how important it is to be aware of the local customs around time wherever you are.
For sure. The original podcast stressed that understanding the traditions is key for, getting along professionally and personally.
Yeah, they even asked listeners to share how time works in their countries on their website, which is a great idea.
It is. It reminds us our way isn't the only way. Now, that original episode, it also had an audio review section at the end.
Right, to reinforce the vocabulary. The transcript shows it gave definitions, more example sentences for all these phrases.
We don't have the audio, but it sounds like a really useful way to help the terms stick, especially for language learners.
Definitely. Hearing and seeing them used again helps lock them in.
Okay, so wrapping this up then. We've gone through quite a bit of the language around lateness, thanks to that English podcast zone Source.
Yeah, key phrases like got tied up, meaning held by something unavoidable.
Traffic jam, pile up for road delays. Running late, as the general term.
And ran over for meetings that go long. Plus, in a sec, meaning very soon, but not literally.
Don't forget, stuck in traffic and backed up for miles, really painting that picture of gridlock.
And maybe the less effective coffee excuse.
Right. And importantly, we talked about those cultural differences, how time isn't seen the same way everywhere.
Which is just so crucial to remember in our, globalized world.
Absolutely. Which kind of leads to a final thought, maybe.
Okay.
Well, thinking about all these different cultural clocks, how might our whole idea of being on time change as the world gets more connected?
That's interesting. Will we become more flexible, or will one standard dominate?
And maybe, what signals are we missing, in daily interactions with people from different backgrounds, just because our assumptions about time are so ingrained?
Yeah. Are we misreading situations because someone operates on a slightly different time frame?
Yeah.
Definitely something to think about.